This is The Credibility Gap, the podcast about the hole our leaders have fallen into by not standing up for us and our rights as citizens, and how we can help them climb out. I'm your host, Brita Firm. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Please subscribe and hit the notification button so you won't miss a single episode. Let's start, as usual, with the road to autocracy. These are the headlines. Senator Cory Booker voted for convicted felon and father-in-law of Ivanka Trump, Charles Kushner. He received a pardon from President Trump, and now he's the ambassador to France and Monaco. Why Senator Booker voted for him, I don't know, but if you want to write to him or call his office, that would be great. He needs to quit doing this. Number 2, the Supreme Court ruled that Trump cannot use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to deport the Venezuelans he deems as invading gang members. The justices have sent the case back to the lower court to design a way for these immigrant refugees to be heard before a judge. That is due process. Number 3, Congresswoman Monica McIver has been charged by the U.S. Justice Department with assault and resisting masked men in plain clothes while she was trying to conduct legal congressional oversight into the opening of a new federal migrant detention center in New Jersey. Number 4, a federal appeals court has once again instructed the Trump administration to do more to try to bring home Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully deported to an El Salvador prison. And number 5, articles of impeachment have been filed in the U.S. House against Judge James Boasberg for politicizing the court in his ruling against Trump in the Alien Enemies Act, even though the Supreme Court has upheld the ruling. And even though the president swore to preserve, protect, and defend the U.S. Constitution at his inauguration, he has said in televised interviews that he doesn't know if that means he has to uphold it or abide by it. He says his lawyers will advise him about that. I believe they have, and I believe he threw a fit. Number 7, the Supreme Court heard arguments last week on the Trump administration's executive order to end birthright citizenship as outlined in the 14th Amendment. The administration argued that no court except the Supreme Court should be able to issue a nationwide or universal injunction to stop Trump. That way, the injunction imposed by the lower court applies only to the 22 states opposing Trump's executive order, ending it. That means this is a really convoluted legal maneuver that most justices seem skeptical of in this instance, but it could set a precedent for later. The Supreme Court had told Trump that he can remove the refugee status given by Congress to Venezuelan people. And ABC management has told hosts of The View to tone down political rhetoric and Trump bashing. What happened to free speech? Corporate media is intervening. Remember to contact your leaders and all the leaders and let them know your concerns over the rule of law. Tell them you won't vote for them if they don't start making some noise about these issues. And stay focused on threats to democracy and be sure that our rights don't disappear. Watch out for distractions like a lot of Trump's tweets. All right, this episode is on due process. As Jon Stewart said recently on The Daily Show, I got to tell you, I did not think he would get this authoritarian this fast. I really didn't. The definition of due process from Webster's: number one, a course of formal proceedings, such as legal proceedings, carried out regularly and in accordance with established rules and principles, also called procedural due process. And the second meaning, a judicial requirement that enacted laws may not contain provisions that result in the unfair, arbitrary, or unreasonable treatment of an individual. This is also called substantive due process. The principles of due process are basically our rights from the Constitution, and they can protect us from each other. They can address our grievances, but most importantly, they are designed to protect us from our government. We need them more than ever today. The first concrete expression of the idea of due process was put forth in the Magna Carta, which was written in 1215. In that document, there was a royal promise that no free man shall be taken and imprisoned, or diseased, or exiled, or in any way destroyed, except by the legal judgment of his peers, and by the law of the land. This idea was written into the Constitution in 6 places. Article 1, which outlines the powers of Congress, remember that, and amendments 4, 5, 6, 8, and 14 in the Bill of Rights. I'm going to read these to you and then give you a brief explanation. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the Constitution. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, public safety may require it. The writ of habeas corpus is the right of any prisoner to be brought before a judge to determine if the imprisonment is lawful. According to reporting in May in the New York Times, at a Senate hearing, Senator Maggie Hassan, Democrat of New Hampshire, asked Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, about this issue. Secretary Noem, she asked, "What is habeas corpus?" "Well," Ms. Noem said, "habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to—" "No," Ms. Hansen interrupted. "Let me stop you, ma'am. Excuse me, that's just not correct." I wonder if she actually said that to float the idea that that's what it means, so that later when they try to abuse habeas corpus even more, that will already have been out in the public mind. Just keep that in mind. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but some of this stuff does happen. All right, the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. This was the rationale for the case law in Miranda v. Arizona, which gave people the right to have their rights read to them when they were being arrested. So this is the right of safety from unreasonable search and seizure without at least probable cause backed up by an oath, or preferably with a warrant signed by a judge laying out exactly what can be searched and who can be seized for that crime. The Fifth Amendment says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentment of an indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in times of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So this is the right in any capital crime to be indicted by a grand jury, unless you're on active duty with the military or the National Guard, who have their own rules, the Code of Military Justice, about how these types of crimes should be handled. The right to be tried only one time for the same crime, we call that double jeopardy. You can't have double jeopardy. And people cannot be forced to testify against themselves. And the right of property to be compensated for if taken by the government, we call that the right of eminent domain. The Sixth Amendment. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law and be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So this is pretty self-explanatory. A right to a speedy trial, a right to a jury trial, the right to know the charges against you, the right to know the witnesses against you, the evidence against you, the right to produce your own witnesses on your behalf, the right to an attorney. That's all there in the Sixth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines be imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. So that's pretty self-explanatory too. You have the right to reasonable bail, the right to reasonable fines, and the right against cruel and unusual punishment. And lastly, the 14th Amendment. In Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. So this tells us quite a bit here. First of all, every person in the United States who was born on our soil is a citizen. I don't think the Supreme Court's going to overturn that, but wait and see. They're debating it now. Then we have the right in every state to have all the federal rights outlined above be in place for state crimes. So no state can supersede a federal law. And in every state, we are entitled to the same due process we would have in a federal crime. So These are the rights in the United States that every person is entitled to before being imprisoned, executed, or deprived of their property or deported. So, when any of these rights are taken away from any person in the United States, we are all in danger of losing them. If anyone can be picked up on a quiet street by masked people in plain clothes who do not state they are law enforcement officers until after their target is restrained and held in an unknown location, not allowed to communicate with those outside the detention facility, and are deprived of the rights I just listed, this can happen to any and all of us. It already has. People in masks and in plain clothes have been arresting people on the streets, people who are in this country legally. As Ezra Klein said in a recent episode of his podcast, The Ezra Klein Show, and I'm paraphrasing here, we've got to be careful that we don't fall into the incrementalist trap of thinking, well, he disappeared 10 people and we got back 8. That's pretty good. No, it's not. We have to get back everybody. We can't let a single person remain in illegal detention. We can't let a single person's rights be violated. If we do, ours will be next. We all deserve the rights I've just stated. That's what's called due process. The next episode of this podcast is, Who is that masked man? So I hope you'll join me for that one. I'm really glad you were here. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and hit that notifications button. Leave a review if you can, and pass this podcast on to others. That's really the best way to get it around. Word of mouth and texting episodes to friends and relatives. Thanks again for listening.